Imagine you're traveling in the city of Boston in the 1980s. You find a wealthy elite and a typical hardworking laborer, both Boston locals, in the same pub. You ask them what their favorite game to play is. The wealthy elite tells you cards, while the laborer tells you cards. Even though they're from the same city, two different dialects have emerged, one called Braham, used by the upper class, and one called the Southie, used by the middle class. This is an example of two different dialects emerging from the same place. But how does this occur in our world? After all, both groups live in the same area. While this may sound unusual, this is quite common in the natural world, where many populations have been known to diverge based on strong selection factors not tied to geographical isolation. This type of speciation is called sympatric speciation and is important to the field of evolutionary biology because it is a common mode of speciation to explain the genetic divergence of populations living in the same area. A 2021 review by Talia Hernandez and others looked at all modes of speciation by looking at range overlap data utilizing the tree of life and found approximately 14% of speciation was due to sympatric speciation events alone throughout a wide variety of phylogenetic branches. It's also worth noting this number is likely an underestimate, as sympatric speciation has not been widely recognized as long as other speciation modes such as allopatric speciation. Much of this skepticism was focused in doubt that selection biases could be so strong to restrict gene flow within a population alone. Sympatric speciation is very much a credible mode of speciation, however. A 1986 review by Alexei Kondrashov and Mikhail Mina validated sympatric speciation as ecologically realistic with theoretically less limitations than other speciation modes. So, how does sympatric speciation occur in nature? Well, there are three common prezygotic isolating mechanisms worth looking at. First, let's take a look at ecological isolation. In this scenario, sympatric speciation is driven by the differences in ecological niches within a population. A 1996 study by Dolph Schluter reported seeing a freshwater species in a roughly 15,000-year-old post-glacier lake that existed in two forms. One form, a stickleback/pelagic form, and the second form exhibiting a morphology better suited for a benthic lifestyle. These morphological disparities can be attributed to their different lifestyle habits. Sticklebacks eat zooplankton as they swim, and benthic forms eat small bottom-dwelling creatures at the bottom. Their separate ecological niches restrict gene flow between the two populations regardless of coexisting in the same lake. Second, let's take a look at temporal isolation. In this scenario, sympatric speciation is driven by the differences in mating times within a population. For example, a 2016 study by R.D. Villanueva looked at blue coral species called Heliopora corallia that existed in two different colony types, a columnar form and a laminar form. The author examined each brooding type via in situ hybridization and found larval release in the columnar type occurred 1 month before the laminar type did. This means the two forms will never crossmate due to their temporal differences, which will result in two different species over time. Finally, our last isolation mechanism is behavioral isolation. In this scenario, sympatric speciation is driven by behavioral differences within a population. In this case, gene flow is restricted by populations that behave a certain way. For example, a 2025 experiment by Yuhan Zhang and Masayo Soma separated Java sparrow couples and found the longer they were separated, the longer their greeting calls would be once reunited. They also found the couples would give complex calls in the presence of subspecies as a way to deter the partner from confusing them with the subspecies. This study shows how singing calls are crucial to relationships and therefore mating. Thus, behavior acts as an isolation mechanism between birds in this population. We can use these guiding principles of sympatric speciation to understand paralleled realities in our world, such as the linguistic problem posed at the beginning of this video. In the example of the Braham versus Southey dialects, there are strong cultures/socioeconomic preferences that form an isolation mechanism for linguistic divergence in the same city. Out of the three isolation mechanisms discussed in this video, behavioral isolation is the best parallel to what is happening here. The Bostonian elites and the working middle class have different behaviors and income brackets that drive the linguistic differences between the two groups and as a result create two dialects inside of Boston. While the divergent forces are driven more culturally than genetically in this case, the principles of sympatric speciation still provide an effective parallel to help explain a real-world problem. That is the underappreciated value of evolutionary biology, and the knowledge we learn from this field can help us understand problems outside of it. Thank you for watching.